I call Lynn Pillay.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. I, along with my colleague Charles Chauvel, would like to speak in support at the second reading of this bill, but indeed, along with my colleague, with a little bit of sadness that this bill, as often we find when it comes to justice matters in this House, Mr Speaker, that this bill simply does not go far enough. But looking on the positive side, this bill enhances the court's powers and their processes for the collection of fines, other monetary penalties and civil debt. The three main policy proposals are around credit reporting, super priority and the driver licence stop order initiative. There are also many technical amendments, and in total I understand, Mr Speaker, that 20 bills are amended. This is another bill, and sorry, what was that? 20 acts. Thank you very much, Mr Mallard. This bill was developed while Labor was in government, and I actually want to acknowledge in this House, Mr Speaker, you, in fact. I think the work that you did was second to none, Mr Speaker, and if I'm going on too much, please shut me down, but Mr Speaker, I feel that you put a tremendous amount of time and energy into this work, and certainly, while not all of it has been picked up, much of it has. It's really sad, Mr Speaker, if we look. National has been very slow, really tardy in fact, in bringing this legislation to the House. It seems quite sad when we look at many other bits of legislation that have come here that have been absolutely offensive to democracy, to workers in New Zealand, to all of the things that we hold dear, that this has languished on the order paper, Mr Speaker, in fact, after all the hard work that you yourself did. And I know, Mr Speaker, so often in this House we are told, don't bring the Speaker into the debate. But on this occasion, it is a time for the whole House to acknowledge you, Mr Speaker. I think there comes times when we can acknowledge people who do go the full 9 yards. And it's really, as I said before, it's really sad that all this work was put in and we have too little, too late from the government. But we're not churlish on this side of the House, as you know, Mr Speaker, not churlish at all. We will support this bill because it goes a little way to what Labor wanted to achieve. The government would say that this is the most comprehensive set of legislative measures designed to strengthen the recovery of unpaid monies in 12 years. And it is critical to the justice system's credibility that these penalties are viewed as a sanction. They claim it demonstrates the government's determination to address the high level of unpaid monies. And again, I would say, Mr Speaker, that everyone in this House has concern about unpaid monies for misdemeanours that have happened throughout the justice system. But what we do know is that in terms of if we have unpaid monies and the process is not efficient, then we do not get the full bang for our buck. And this is what I would say, notwithstanding that we are supporting the bill, this is what I would say does not happen with this bill. It goes some way, but as we always say in this instance, it does not go far enough. It does not go far enough to resolving the problems. We support it because it results from the work, as I said, Mr Speaker, if I can refer to you yet again, from the work that we did in Labor while in government. We approved the driver's licence stop order proposal in July 2008. Overseas, these orders have increased the success rate of collecting fines, especially if we look at Australia. Figures earlier this year show that between July 2008 and June 2009, courts wiped $95.1 million. Now that's getting close to what this government gave to private schools in New Zealand. It's a lot of money. As the member said, it is a lot of money. And if we can move towards the total $806 million of unpaid fines and a way of remedying and actually getting those monies paid, then that would be a problem, or that would be a remedy that everyone in this House would acknowledge. But there are general concerns about the amount of overdue fines, and also from victims where offenders don't comply with negotiated outcomes, with reparation orders, and the frustration of creditors and debtors using the court civil debt enforcement process. But as I've said before, it's taken so long to come before the House. If we had brought this together early, I would ask this House, when the government is in such a dreadful state of actually providing social services, providing health in this country, that money would have gone a long way if the government had actually got off their butts and done something constructive. Exactly. If the government had actually acted more prudently, more effectively, more efficiently, which I know are difficult for this government to do, then we would have had a better health system, and maybe we wouldn't have even seen the education cuts in this country. The Justice Ministry, that research shows that when young people cross a certain threshold of debt, and that's usually around 2,000, they become unable and unwilling to even pay off their fines. And I think my colleague Charles Chevelle referred to John Maynard Keynes, if you owe the bank $100, you have a problem. If you owe the bank $1 million, it has the problem. Well, John Key knows all about that. But we're talking about the government coffers, and we're talking about what provides social services, health, education to people in New Zealand. And whilst this government has sat, twiddled their thumbs, brought in silly legislation such as the Sack It Will Act, as it is now, they could have done more constructive enacted more constructive legislation such as this that would have actually helped. It wouldn't have created jobs in this country, it wouldn't have helped things that this government hasn't done in the recession, but it would have gone a small way to actually resolve some of the problems of funding services and support that we see now getting decimated in this country under that government. And if I go back to the bill, because I know you'll want me to, Mr. Speaker, because in large part it was due to you, Mr. Speaker, but if we look at waiving minor infringements, now we have some territorial authorities, they have a policy to waive the infringements for expired warrants of fitness or for out-of-date registrations of a month or less when the fault is remedied in a timely manner. Quite common sense, we would have said. But this is not uniform across all authorities. Where it does apply, the general public is largely unaware of it. So the general public are very dissatisfied with this system. They're very dissatisfied in terms of victims seeing reparation and remedies for what they have suffered. And I think, as we've said, I think the whole House have recognised that Mr. Speaker, whilst he was responsible for this, he worked hard to make it happen. And it's really sad that this lazy government has wasted